We really need to stop saying that this game or that game can't run on the Nintendo Switch because I'm a social media developer. And that's pretty much what I've been seeing quite a bit from people who barge into the live streams or who comment on everything. And it seems like every single time there's a new excuse why, oh, that game did come over to the Nintendo Switch. Or, oh, we're going to move the goalpost a little bit and say, oh, it's not going to run to where I want it to run. Well, look, that's not the whole point when it comes down to it and what people are looking for when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Let's take, for example, back in 2017 when Doom was announced. People were freaking out that Doom was going to be on the Nintendo Switch, that you're going to be able to play this heavy, intense graphic shooter, albeit a lower frame rate and resolution, anywhere that you want. So many people said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this game is coming over. I can't believe they were able to port it. I can't believe the Nintendo Switch can run this type of game, not knowing that it's not all based on raw power or brute strength, outside of more like architecture and how the developers can work with the system and having the right team behind it. And it seems like people have forgotten that over and over and over since 2017 when the big games like Doom and even Wolfenstein following that, Wolfenstein 2, came over in 2018. Now you can fast forward all the way to 2019 and yet we have the same things happening. When the rumors started with The Witcher 3 coming over to Nintendo Switch, so many people said this can't happen. So many people swore up and down that the Nintendo Switch couldn't run Witcher 3 no matter what, that it wasn't going to happen and that they would do something crazy if it did. It got announced for the Nintendo Switch. At first, people were very skeptical about the game in terms of how it would turn out, but now that people have review copies and people have actually gotten their hands on the game, it's actually a pretty good port that runs and looks good considering the hardware that it's on. And everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people were really saying that The Witcher 3, there's no way it's coming over because of how the game ran on the base Xbox One. Ignoring, once again, it's about optimization, ignoring once again that it's about taking the time and having the right developers behind the project in order to get something running good, as long as it has enough tools and the architecture that they can work with to get a good port going. Now, don't get me wrong here, guys. There are some games that are pretty crazy when it comes to the intensity of the game or what it's dependent on, CPU or GPU or whatever the case is. I'm not trying to be an online developer, but all I'm trying to say is that we should really let the developers do the developing and stop trying to act like we know everything about the Nintendo Switch in terms of how it ticks or how you can develop on it or what developers can do, because I can guarantee you none of us can code and none of us can do what Iron Galaxy, what Virtuos, and what Panic Button have been doing all over these years. They know technical terms when it comes to the Switch. They know the ins and outs. They've been taking these big games and have been porting them over for years now. And every single time it seems like people are shocked when we get this. Now, some of the newest examples outside of The Witcher 3 are also a game like Overwatch. A couple years ago, the developers, Blizzard, were saying, we're not so sure about this, certain graphic settings and all of this and that. They didn't completely rule it out 100%, but that led social media developers to sit there and say, well, it's not possible. There's no way it's going to happen. They can't do this. The Switch can't do that. And then when it comes over, the new goalpost is, oh, well, it's an old game. But you weren't saying that back in 2017 when the Switch first launched. It wasn't such a old game. It was a new game and it couldn't run at that point. But a couple years go by, oh, well, it's an old game. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with The Witcher, even though it's a current gen game. That was the thing that people were saying kind of back then was, oh, well, it can't handle current gen games. Now we're getting some of those current gen games from these big port studios like an Iron Galaxy or like a Virtuos and a Panic Button. And now the new goalpost moving is, oh, well, it's not running it the way that I want to run it, or it's not running it like PS4 and Xbox One. Of course it's not running it like PS4 and Xbox One. PS4 and Xbox One also can't be picked up and moved out of the house without a TV and work properly where you can play it anywhere that you want. That's the whole point of playing a game on the Nintendo Switch or having it on the system in the first place. You can play the game anywhere that you want. It fits for busy lifestyles, or if somebody is going to be traveling to where you can be playing The Witcher 3 on a plane. Can't really do that with the PS4 or the Xbox One unless it's built into the seat cushion or something, or first class. I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure there's some ways people have done that. Maybe some type of weird remote play thing that might barely work. I don't even know. But for the most part, the Nintendo Switch is the easiest and best way to play bigger games anywhere that you want. Whether it's Nintendo's first party titles like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey, or other bigger games like Doom, Wolfenstein, and the upcoming Overwatch on the Switch. So to me, I just find it kind of weird that people still try to bring up this whole, oh, well, it's not going to run like this this or that, or it's going to be downgraded once you say, well, look at all these other games that are coming over. I think we all know that, and that doesn't support anybody's point or the person who says this can't run when you say, oh, well, it's going to be downgraded. Yes, it's going to be downgraded, just like PS4 and Xbox One are downgraded from high-end PCs. It runs based on what the system can do, but that doesn't mean that it can't run at all, because we don't develop these games. And Panic Button, Iron Galaxy, and also Virtuos have proven and have stated many times, hey, if you get with us from the beginning, you let us know what's going on, we can get this going. So many times, time and time again, we've heard them say this, yet people don't heed this warning here. You also look at a game like The Outer Worlds. Nobody would have thought that that game would come over to the Nintendo Switch just because it's a newer game. It's a open world style of game. It's also Obsidian, which was purchased by Microsoft, but they already had a commitment to bring the game over. And I think Virtuos is doing that game. And that is a big graphic intense type of third person shooter that people wouldn't expect to be on the Nintendo Switch, but you're getting a developer that's talking to them with the beginning, that's getting the stuff down, that knows the Nintendo Switch and can get the engines and get everything going to where it's good. And on top of that, I grew up back in the day when you would see these huge arcade cabinets, right? You'd go into these huge arcade cabinets, you see these amazing graphics, and then when you go home and you play it on your NES, yeah, it didn't look as good, but it was still the game for the most part. Obviously, it didn't run as good, the graphics didn't look as good, the sound might not be as good, but we still got a lot of these arcade games that the arcade cabinets were a lot stronger than the home consoles, but we still got to play them on the home consoles. People still like to play that on the NES or the Sega system or whatever the case was, right? We have that before. This is not anything new to see something that's way more powerful than what you can have at home or anything and have them ported over. They've been doing this for years, for decades. So it's always funny when I see somebody try to kind of barge in and say, this can't do this or that can't do that, when we should probably just say, hey, can we wait and see? And that's kind of how I think about it when I have talked to some of these developers and I've seen what they're saying in these interviews, and they're saying, hey, if they talk to us with these third-party developers and they want to get a game on the Nintendo Switch, we can definitely get it going. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and say that the Nintendo Switch is the most powerful system and it can run every single thing in the world and it's going to be able to do all this and it's going to be able to run all the PS5 and the next Xbox games and all that. I'm not trying to say that because I'm not a developer. All I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't just go ahead and rule something out right away just based on your own eye test and not knowing a single lick of tech when it comes down to it. We should let the people who know how to actually develop, like Panic Button and like Virtuos, and like them say things. We should listen to them a little bit more, because anytime that I see people saying that this can't run or that can't run or whatever the case is, it's not like they're quoting articles and it's not like they're talking about how Panic Button has said this or not. They never bring up any of that, and they just make excuses whenever we do get anything like a Wolfenstein or like a Doom or like a Witcher or like a Overwatch or like a Skyrim or like a Diablo 3 or whatever the case is, right? Which some of those games have been on the previous generation. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people didn't think that the Switch can do this or do that, and we end up constantly getting reminders that no, we have developers, we have specialties, we can kind of get this stuff done. Where there's a will, there's a way. And on top of that, you can just make the game for the Switch. If you want to make a game for the Nintendo Switch, there also still is that option. Everybody always looks at porting games over, port. But what about just making it for the Nintendo Switch and doing the best for that system? And I think that's the next thing that I kind of want to move over to. It's not whether it's going to run or if we can or cannot. It's whether you want to make the financial commitment in order to get it on there. I think there's another side to this that people don't really try to equate to it, and that is the money side. Is it worth our time? Is it worth our effort as a developer or a publisher in order to get it on this platform? You need a big install base, what the Nintendo Switch is doing, but we've seen developers, for example, like Square Enix say, hey, look, Dragon Quest 11 S, that game that just came out, that game was literally made for the Switch. They didn't just take the PS4 game and sloppily port it over with glitches and things like that. They literally said, hey, let's make this for the Switch. And as you guys can see, it's one of graphically the best big third-party games on the Nintendo Switch, hands down. I'm so impressed with what they've done with that game. So I think it's more of a matter when it comes to things, if they're going to take the financial investment in order to get it done, and of course, if they're going to have the right team behind it. Some developers don't have that. They can't get that done, or one of the big developers that are good at it aren't available for them to do it. So this is just kind of my 2 cents on the matter when it comes down to it. I'm not trying to sit here and say, like I said, I want to make sure that I'm very clear. I'm not trying to sit here and say that the Nintendo Switch can run every every single thing perfectly, and it's going to be just like PS4 and Xbox One, and other people don't know what they're talking about. All I'm saying is that from what I've seen from these companies like Iron Galaxy and Panic Button and Virtuos, from bringing over other big current generation games over to Nintendo Switch, and that run at a decent frame rate and look decent and can be played anywhere that you want, we should at least never rule something out completely, because we don't develop these games at the end of the day. And we've seen time and time again that no, there are these big games that are coming over. So what are you guys' thoughts on what I had to say here? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go ahead and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let us know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for this RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.